Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Juneteenth is on this Wednesday, but a number of cities in America have already begun having parades and other celebrations, but I noticed the white media is trying to put their own slant on things. See, as with any celebration or observance, the Juneteenth celebrations are practically all peaceful and happy events, but in a nation of over 300 million people, many of whom own more than one gun, there's always the possibility someone at some point is going to take any public gathering as a chance to cause some unpleasantness. I bring this up because we routinely get inundated with white media hysteria whenever there's a shooting at some event and they think the shooter was black. It gets wall-to-wall coverage and they just can't wait to show you the shooter. Nobody points out how all the other Juneteenth events were peaceful. They focus on one particular incident because this is how propaganda works. Well, allow me to point to some examples of holiday killings that the white media doesn't talk about. Say America's St. Patrick's Day massacres that happen on an annual basis. I don't know why these don't get any attention, but I'll recite them to you and maybe you can figure it out. 2017, in Norman, Oklahoma, Xavier Mark Bakesfield was gunned down and at least one innocent bystander also struck by gunfire during St. Patrick's Day. The assumption at first was that this had to be black-on-black crime, but then the police found the two suspects involved, and they weren't black at all. The killers were Devin Lee Workman and his accomplice Dustin Lee Gant. Anyway, both the killers were convicted and serving life sentences now. There's practically nowhere online, though, that you can find out much about this crime, which is routine for the white media. This is how they bury the stories that they don't want you to know about. And then people just assume that these kind of things don't happen because otherwise, wouldn't you have heard more about it? This is a form of mind control. Anyway, to continue, in 2019 in West Virginia, Dale Lee Wright, a deadbeat dad, owed $40,000 in child support and was facing jail time unless he could come up with at least $6,000 for the court. He asked to meet with his old employer, Jeffrey Evans, because he knew his old boss would be carrying cash. Wright lured Evans to a spot with a story about how he wanted Evans to look at some antique auto parts. As a result, Evans brought $7,000 with him. Wright shot him, though didn't take the money. Wright's since been sentenced the following year to 43 years in prison, but because of genetic immunity from law, the judge gave him 21 years suspended sentence, so basically cut his sentence in half. Then you had St. Patrick's Day 2020 in Phoenix, Arizona. Jerry Lee Peck was arrested for shooting a man after they were both drinking and celebrating the holiday. Not surprisingly, there's no further information I've been able to find on this particular crime. So, like the others, it's treated as a one-day story by the white media and buried. Remember that whenever some white supremacist tries to tell you that the reason we don't hear about non-black shooters is because there are none. No, it's because the white media and the white authorities bury these stories. By the way, I'm sure you've also noticed how a disproportionate number of these good old boys have Lee as their middle name. I swear I didn't do that deliberately. That's just what these creeps' names are. And why is that? It's because their illiterate parents are too stupid to know that General Lee lost the war. You name your kid after a loser, don't be surprised when they exhibit loser tendencies. And last year, there was a double murder that took place at a St. Patrick's Day parade in Jackson, Mississippi. The victims were both black, 27-year-old Joshua Spann, a volunteer firefighter, and 23-year-old Jubilee Simpkins. The online trolls and propagandists didn't have any actual facts about this case, but that didn't stop them from insisting that this had to be yet another instance of black-on-black crime because, well, it had to be. Nonetheless, police quickly made an arrest in this case, and it turned out the killer wasn't black at all. It was 27-year-old Jordan Cummins. This crime happened when Cummins and his girlfriend, Jenny Lukens, got into a fight after Jordan began flirting with one of Jenny's gal pals right in front of her. The fight continued and became more violent. They were doing this at a St. Patrick's Day parade, might I add. Joshua Spann and Jubilee and others tried to break up this act of domestic violence, and that was when Cummins shot them both. I'll bet you never heard about this incident, have you? Because it's exactly the opposite of the kind the white media loves to report on when the suspected shooters are black. Jenny Lukens, the woman Cummings was beating on the day of the murders, was also arrested in connection with this double murder, so it turns out she wasn't much of a victim at all. Cummins has since been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, but because of genetic immunity from law, the judge actually gave the double murderer Cummins bail. and it was a measly $250,000 for each count of murder, which he easily was able to pay. Now, since when does any judge, especially in the red state South, offer bond for someone who's been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, much less offer them a tiny, pitiful bail such as $250,000? And the judge didn't even require this creep to be electronically monitored either. This is what the judge did for a double murder suspect who killed 2 people, including a firefighter, at a St. Patrick's Day event. Treated him as if he was charged with some low-level offense like minor assault or something. Was it because the judge didn't think that this was a serious crime? Or perhaps the judge, like most of these racists on the bench, approved of this killing and wanted to show their full support for it? We already know the answer to that one. And in case there was any doubt about this reprobate's mendacity, a video surfaced days after the murders showing Cummins bragging about the killings from jail. He was bragging about having murdered 2 black people in cold blood. Nobody called this a hate crime, of course. They never do. Now again, this is Mississippi's capital, a red state that's constantly talking about soft-on-crime prosecutors and soft-on-crime judges, but you didn't hear any of the white right say a peep about this. Same way they had nothing to say about Brock Turner or Drew Clinton. Whenever the criminal isn't black, we never hear outrage from the white right at all. None of them talking about laws need to be made tougher or complaining about woke judges and woke prosecutors. Well, the family of Jubilee Simpkins kept an eye on this murderer Cummins. They hired a private investigator to surveil him, and predictably they found that he immediately violated his bond by having contact with his accomplice, Jenny Lukens, spending several days together in the same home. The Simpkins family presented this evidence to the authorities, and astonishingly, this time Cummings' bond was actually revoked. But he never should have gotten bond in the first place. As of this briefing, Cummings' trial is still going on, with the defense putting on their case. But these are just a few of the St. Patrick's Day shootings that have occurred that the white media and these online racist trolls don't dare talk about. Now, I'm sure many will point out that the racial cover-up of these non-black shooters aside, it's still not okay for black people to be engaged in these kind of things either. I agree. The problem is white power has chosen for things to be this way. It has no interest in stopping it. This is the price white supremacy has demanded the society pay as the result of having control over black people, depriving black people of the ability to control our own economics and politics of where we live. If they truly want these kind of things to not occur, then they already know what the answer is. Stop depriving black people of the economic power we require, and stop interfering with our ability to control our own affairs where we live. We've seen many examples of what happens when black men are not blocked by white authorities, such as the dads on duty in Louisiana who took a high school from complete chaos to order. These black men were not cops. They were simply black men, and that was more than enough. White power knows this, and they don't want black men to be seen doing these kind of things. They don't want black men to be looked at as the authority in the places where they live, because then who's going to obey white power? Don't kid yourself. When the white media reports on these kind of incidents, that's them celebrating. It reassures them that the status quo is still in place and not in danger of falling. They don't want to change it because this kind of status quo is what ensures their power. Under white supremacy, life is cheap, especially if it's black life. They don't even take action to save their own children in the suburbs from mass murderers in their midst. Do you truly believe that they're actually bothered by incidents like these in the black community? And yes, the problem is largely due to fatherlessness. This is the kind of chaos and dysfunction you predictably get when the family structure is fractured. But I'm curious about something. When you look at these school shooters, they had fathers in the home. In the case of Ethan Crumbley, his father was not only in his life, his father was the one who bought him the gun he used to commit his mass murder. In the black community, the problem is that the fathers are not there, but whenever the black father is present, these kind of incidents are all but unheard of. And even without the black father in the home, how many Ethan Crumbleys or Nicholas Cruzes has the black community produced? Meanwhile, in the suburbs, the fathers in the home haven't prevented one mass murder after the next. Which is more noteworthy? 2 dead, 10 injured, or 10 dead, 2 injured? I'll let you decide which is worse, but this society has already made its choice, and it was the wrong one. This is the cost white power has chosen to pay as the result of helping to displace black fathers from the home, but also as the result of controlling the economics and politics of the areas we live in. White power is in control because black people certainly aren't. If you truly want this dysfunctional behavior to stop, then black people simply must have control of the resources where we live and the ability to be in charge of what happens there. As long as white power continues to tamper with our internal politics and to deprive us of the economic stability we require, then these things will continue to happen. And that's what white power is counting on. Though I have to say, I don't know what will stop the Ethan Crumbleys of the world from happening, because white power has already given them comfort and wealth. It feeds their egos nonstop, and they still turn right around and commit some act of carnage. This is a cultural issue that no amount of economic prosperity can solve, because those people in the suburbs already have prosperity right now. This is an inherent problem, one the white supremacists refuse to face. That's why they hyperfixate on black people. They figure by constantly bringing us up, they can keep attention off of themselves. That's the reason that they keep doing it. So let's get this whole "the Negroes are shooting up some public event" canard straight. Last time I checked, it wasn't black people who shot up that country music concert in Las Vegas. Once somebody actually takes a glance at stories that the white media isn't giving all the attention to, we see a different picture. And that being the case, the only thing the white media should be observing isn't a holiday, but rather the truth. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Kenneth Prescia, Chevalier Foster, Rochelle Rollins, Rebellious Zoe, and Daryl Fuller. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.